Are we live?
We are live. I didn't even give you a lead in. This is for the blooper reel. This is for the blooper reel.
I was going to ask a setup question, but I'll refrain.
Oh, you're waiting. You're waiting on it. How you guys doing? It's good to see you back.
Doing great.
Doing well.
You're both looking fit and strong. You any training, specifically for any events or anything at the moment?
We got the Murph coming up soon.
Yep.
I think all of us are doing that, right?
A lot of push-ups and pull-ups today. Getting ready for the Murph.
I got to tell you, it's hard. I was sick and injured for a little bit. So this morning I did my first mile run, and then I did 60% of the Murph, and then another mile run. And I have you both in mind, honestly.
You can do a mile run with your eyes closed.
Yeah. I don't think that's fair for you to train for the run when that's slow.
Well, no, I do it. Yeah, but you guys have got me in the other stuff, so I'm working on it. But I'm enjoying it. It's actually nice to have a goal that, I don't know, something a little bit different.
Not to put you on the spot, but what is your mile time now if you're huffing it, getting after it?
Cruising 6 minute. Yeah. But if I huff it and I go, okay, I've got to beat you, like say you're just in front of me and I've got to hunt you down, I think I could probably get down to maybe low fives if I really, but I'd be hurting big time.
That's a sprint.
Yeah. Which is kind of, I don't know, it's funny. Like, I don't know who that other person was a long time ago, but now it's like, when you kind of go like, that's actually kind of, it's good, but it's kind of rubbish too. You know what I mean?
So us regular folks would probably do that first mile by 8.5 minutes. But we'll just work on catching up with you on the pull-ups.
We all have our strengths. It's like I'm always saying to Barry, the one thing I've got him on in the health, strength, fitness, the one thing I have is a VO2 over him. But otherwise he's got me in mobility, stability, strength, and everything else.
I think you're double my VO2.
Yeah, we got to get your VO2 up a little bit, didn't we?
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, guys, today's episode, I want to nail down on one particular area, and that's Cystatin C. And the reason I want to bring that one up, since I came here about 9 months ago now, it seems to be the one that, in terms of blood biomarkers, the one that we talk about a fair bit here. And it surprised me because before coming here, it wasn't even one that I'd kind of registered. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about our health scores and how much we can actually change those. So say you get a bit of a red on your reference guide, you're like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I want to know, well, how much can we actually impact that? I want us to discuss today also what we each believe are some of the most impactful things we can do starting today for our health. We may not agree on those things, but we can have opinions on it. And then I'm going to finish with some rapid fire, overrated, underrated. There's a lot of debate in the world of health, and I want to see our opinions on it. We don't have to agree on that either.
Sounds fun.
Sounds fun. So let's get into it. David, so let's start with Cystatin C, mate. I'd love, firstly, what is it, and why then is it showing up in just so much of our results on our health scores?
Well, what it is it's a byproduct that is in our body that the kidneys clear out, and it's a marker that's traditionally used as a measure of kidney function. Mm-hmm. So really the lower your Cystatin C, generally the better your kidney function.
Okay, and so you've found out by doing these health scores, it keeps popping up. It's all kidney related, or are we seeing it impact other scores as well?
Well, I guess where it's popped up is we took the data science approach to looking at biomarkers instead of sort of accepting, again, that cholesterol is the thing. We sort of took all the biomarkers, said what are the most correlated predictors, and we came up with like A1C was high, but perhaps the best marker of them all of health was Cystatin C.
Wow. Something
that's rarely measured, but we saw over 500,000 people followed for 15 years that the people that was the most predictive measure, and it was predictive of very many diseases. So I could reference the biomarker reference guide here, which actually it's publicly accessible. You can look up any biomarker and how predictive it is on any disease, and you can see for man versus woman. So for women here, just as a predictor of heart disease, the people with the highest Cystatin C have 2.5x the risk of heart disease.
Whoa.
So if you have a nice low value, you're basically less than 50% risk. Type 2 diabetes, you're actually a high Cystatin C is a 400% increase in risk.
Whoa.
Even for dementia, it's a 2x predictor. Kidney disease, 7x predictor. Liver disease, even COPD, all-cause mortality, it's a 3x predictor. So the biomarker reference guide, again, it's all based on actual outcomes. You can see that that's really the thing we should be working at. And so that sort of got our focus toward kidney health as being as a primary thing we should be.
It's almost the
about.
starting point.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like I was just saying, though, before coming here, Barry, have you heard of, before all of this, had you ever heard anybody talking about Cystatin C?
No, never. And I don't think I had it, part of my blood tests in the past ever. And, we've since, based on David's research, included that as a standard in our basic blood panel, even, is to have Cystatin C included. But yeah, to your point, I don't think anybody talks about it. Even physicians that we talk to that we're working with today, they're not very familiar with it.
That's amazing. Is this in your mind? Have you seen it before doing all this data science research? Had you heard about it?
I never heard of it, and I had taken very many advanced blood tests too. I would pay $1,000 plus for these advanced blood tests, and they still didn't know to include Cystatin C. They would add all kinds of advanced lipids and particle size and things, but the most predictive marker, Cystatin C, wasn't included.
So correct me if I'm wrong, if you're saying Cystatin C is such a big predictor across all of those diseases, are you kind of saying that it all starts in the kidney to some degree? If we pick an organ, mm-hmm. Obviously all the organs matter, but I'm just saying, if we pick an organ, is that the one we got to focus on?
That I believe is the most important organ to focus on. So even we focus a lot on cardiac health, but a lot of the cardiac issues are downstream of kidney issues. So when you actually look at our health scores, when we predict every disease, we have most accurate prediction of cardiac events, all-cause mortality, kidney health. It turns out the kidney health model is way more predictive of all-cause mortality than even the cardiac score. So if you're 70 years old and you have the highest possible, it would be better to have the highest possible kidney health score than the highest possible cardiac score for highest probability to live well into your 80s and 90s.
This is mind-blowing me.
It's pretty crazy.
Because one, like you said, we're not getting it in our typical blood panels, so physicians aren't typically testing for it at all. And second, we're saying actually everybody seems to always be so focused on the heart. They're on statins and they're whatever they can to reduce LDLs, and I'm not beating up on any one biomarker, but this one, I feel like we've stumbled across something, and I say stumbled lightly because I know you guys have been working incredibly hard on collecting the right data. But how do we then get the right messaging out to the world to listen to us, to say, hey, this is an area that we all should be seriously considering?
Talk about it on a podcast.
Talking on the world's greatest podcast. What are you talking about?
I think we need to push research in a direction to actually study it. Because when you look at the research, it's so focused around cardiac markers and a little bit about blood sugar markers. But I've had conversations with nephrologists who they spend their career on the kidney, and I have not gotten one lifestyle intervention out of them that's supported by research. So when you think healthy kidneys, the only kind of the general thing you hear is drink more water, and even our data doesn't support drinking more water helps your kidneys. So I've read 4 or 5 books on kidney health at this point to try to lead me in the right direction, experiment a little bit on myself to try to get my kidneys healthier. But ultimately we have to do the studies to actually know what interventions will help.
What has helped you? Like as an N of one, has there been anything that you're like, oh, that kind of works?
I think like finding the right balance of training, like doing something every day but not over exerting too often. So like I've sort of settled on doing a high intensity day, maybe 1 out of every 5 days, and maybe one or two harder weights days. But I try most of my days to just do a lighter zone 2 workout. So I think you need that circulation. You need to get some kind of exertion every day, but not overdoing. Overdoing it could strain the kidneys. And then the other thing is just experimenting with different combinations of supplements. So we see in our data like things like GLA and like people supplementing on GLA and even garlic supplements. It's even glucosamine is linked to lower kidney dysfunction when you look at just the data. And again, these are not experiments, these are population studies. So it could be that those people had other, cofactors that made them healthier, but it's some evidence to go on, which is better than no evidence. And so I'm trying a new supplement stack that's very kidney health oriented.
Dave, what about alcohol consumption? Have you read alcohol consumption is?
Oh yeah, alcohol is interesting. When we look in our data, almost all forms of alcohol is linked to worse kidney scores, except for red wine. And a moderate amount of red wine is actually linked to a slightly lower cystatin C.
Is that right? And when when you say that, is that like a bottle a night? And what are we talking about here?
Well, we look at, again, this is based on survey data. And
Okay.
then people followed 15 years, right? So take it with a grain of salt. But we found that as much as 8 glasses of wine per week, red wine.
Not all in the same night.
Oh, okay.
Not
I
on
was
the
gonna
same
say,
night, yeah, right.
And what is a glass?
Right.
Yeah.
And again, this is based on the UK. So they drink a little more than us here. So it's about a glass a night.
Yeah.
So people drinking a glass a night. So far, the evidence doesn't seem against it, even though certainly a ton of papers that focus more on sort of like the biological processes will say like alcohol will show that alcohol interferes with metabolism, and it's generally all around bad. But again, we talk about hormetic stresses, right? Like, I mean, when you lift weights, you break down muscle, and then it grows back more. So there might be things we don't understand that where red wine will turn out to be healthy. So right now I'm on the fence again because I know I see the alcohol bad, I see the outcomes positive with little red wine. So call me neutral on that.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Hey, I'm curious, Dave, because I have my blood test coming up this Thursday. Have you tested how many days you work out and the sensitivity to cystatin C, like in advance of your blood test? For example, if you say, I'm not going to do any intense training for 3 days, maybe even longer, versus 1 day, have you by chance seen any correlation there?
I haven't seen one yet, but I would say I haven't been tested enough. I would say if I figured out that this was an important predictor just 2 years ago. So really it's only been probably maybe half a dozen blood tests in the past couple of years. So it hasn't been enough to see it.
I'm going to try to just do zone 2 at least 2 days in advance.
Try. You're going to have to just stop doing the CrossFit, your fighting workouts.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're able to lower the intensity in the fighting workouts.
Yeah, martial arts doesn't really permit that.
Some slow motion punches.
Yeah. What are you doing? Jiu-jitsu, right?
Mainly jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. I imagine that works you over.
Yeah.
Totally non-related, but kind of related. Have you guys ever had kidney stones?
I have not.
Is there any correlation with any of this with kidney stones? Because that was the worst thing in my entire life.
Unfortunately, I haven't, but we don't have that in our data.
I'm throwing it out there.
At least from the biological process standpoint, I have read it's tied to high uric acid. So that would be one marker to probably keep low. But again, we don't have the cause and effect in the data to know if low uric acid keeps you safe from that.
Hey, Dave, I have a quick question based on the blood biomarker reference guide that we share, as you mentioned, publicly. So cystatin C, as you well know, is ranked as the highest, in importance, biomarker importance for our predictive models for MACE and for kidney function. But it's surprisingly not as high as one might expect for type 2 diabetes. I think it's, for example, it's like a 10, which is top for MACE and kidney, and for type 2 diabetes, it's 4. However, you just cited before, a few minutes ago, that it's, I think you said a 700x. So when people look at the blood biomarker reference guide, how should they kind of square those or reconcile those?
I think it's good to look at the top 10s first. So there are a lot of strong predictors of type 2 diabetes. So there are ones more important than cystatin C. Even though it is a 7x predictor, and it may also be that the reverse cause, like once you have diabetes and a very high A1C, we know it really damages the kidneys.
Go the other way.
But I've seen plenty of people pre-diabetic struggling with weight loss who have perfect Cystatin C.
Yeah.
So I think it's maybe the flip side versus. So in terms of being proactive, I think your metabolic health is somewhat independent of your kidney health.
Have you also read that or learned in your studies that it seems as though Cystatin C is less sensitive for muscle mass? So, one of our, at least my theories, is that since I have high creatinine levels, that there's some literature that suggests that if you have higher muscle mass, that your level will be higher, whereas Cystatin C, that doesn't hold as true. Have you seen anything?
If there is a link, it's much, much less.
Yeah.
So I see the same with creatinine. Creatinine is typically used as a marker of kidney health.
Can you just quickly tell us what creatinine is for people that don't know?
It is similarly. It's a byproduct that the kidney usually cleans up if it's working well, but it's also a byproduct of muscle mass. So creatinine you can have for a good reason or a bad reason. So it's a terrible marker of kidney health. It actually has kind of a U shape in terms of disease risk. Like too high is indicative of kidney disease. But pretty much all doctors know, okay, well, if it's high and you have high muscle mass, that probably explains it. And then too low, actually most don't flag you, but too low is indicative of disease too, and that could be a result of too low muscle mass. But it's a $1 marker versus a $20 marker. So
versus Cystatin C is $20, and that's why that's why people aren't getting it.
Right.
Partly.
It's partly?
Partly in just the unknown.
Lack of education,
influence,
yeah.
But I think when you look at sort of the typical panel insurance will cover, it's stuff that can be measured very inexpensively.
Yeah. So big takeaway on this one is people should be looking to add that in. $20.
Absolutely.
$20 once every 6 months or whenever you're doing your blood work.
Absolutely. It's not like $1,000
No,
test or
no,
anything
no,
like
no.
that, but you just got to know that this is important and decide if it's worth the $20 to add it.
And the other big takeaway is Barry thinks he's got big muscles, and that's what impacts his creatinine.
It does.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, it does. And so anyone with Barry's muscle mass would have high creatinine. And again, that's why it's not a good indicator of kidney health.
Well, let's shift gear a little bit. I mean, I want to stay on our health scores, our Volo scores. And so let's say somebody gets their first lot of Volo scores, and there's a couple of little red flags on our chart, like you can kind of see, and they want to impact it, and they're trying to figure out how. To your knowledge, how much can somebody change the scores that they're being given? We're kind of looking at the future here. We're looking at major cardiac events, kidney, liver, type 2 diabetes, COPD, and
brain health,
dementia, and then overall mortality. I mean, these scores, to some degree, can be a little bit overwhelming if you kind of go, oh, wow, I thought I was doing all right. How much have you seen, and I know these scores have come about over these last, several years, how much have you seen people being able to make some impact and changes towards that?
Well, having been monitoring people just a couple of years with our scores, the biggest and quickest changes are definitely the metabolic score. I've seen people definitively on the way to type 2 diabetes, and we sort of catch it at the pre-diabetes point where they're unable to lose weight, the fasting insulin high, the A1C's creeping up, and I've seen people change that score to better than the median in 6 months.
Wow.
So I think that's one where you can, again, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's this sort of fad to go low carb, for example. And when you go low carb, you naturally go high fat, high protein. And saturated fat is actually what causes type 2 diabetes. A lot of people don't know that. They think it's a sugar. Now, once the fat gets in your cells and you're unable to process sugar, the sugar sort of brings out the symptoms, and you get the high blood sugar.
Wow.
And so that's some of the things, some of the information that we need to change out there is that carbs in itself do not cause diabetes. They just can bring out the symptoms.
It's amazing, isn't it? I always think with the macronutrients, it's like there's some common sense that's needed sometimes, and I think we swing incredibly far one way, and we swing and we could debate that, and people are debating it all online. But from what you're seeing, having a balanced macronutrient, carbs, fats, proteins, you've seen people make these changes. What have they done? Just diet alone, or has it been
a diet and exercise?
Yeah.
So learning, okay, like the right kind of exercise too. So some are not exercising, just need to do something. And really, when it comes to exercise physiology, something better than nothing is the really only really known.
I love that. Yeah.
Thing in exercise. There's a lot of debate of which kind is better, but I tend to favor and see results with some zone 2 training in there, because people will start training and they'll train too hard, and when you train too hard, you're burning all carbs. So if you actually want to burn some fat, you gotta lower that intensity, and if you haven't done much zone 2 much training in that low intensity, you need to go lower than you think. So like just enough that you're sweating, can carry conversation, and it should be a little bit boring. So I usually read a book while I'm doing my zone 2 training, but that's where you're actually burning the fat and training your body to burn fat.
And you're not creating that inflammation around the body, right? It's like I kind of feel one of the things, I love to run fast when I'm fit enough and it feels good, and I'm like, I know I should be in zone 2, and I see it at 160 heart rate, I'm like, oh, to hell with it. And I go, and then I'll do that workout, and then I'll come to work, and I'm like brain fog, my body feels hot, and like I don't feel good the rest of the day. I'm just self-experimenting.
I'm the same. I love the high intensity days. It bothers me that I can only do it 1 out of every 4 or 5 days, but those are the days I look forward to.
I've got you in my ear, by the way, going, Greg, go zone 2, go for a fast walk. I'm like, oh.
So I've got to control myself and bring the intensity down on most days.
Yeah.
And to get that effect.
Hey, one other lifestyle thing we should mention, which is probably a no-brainer and obviously talked about for decades, is smoking. Smoking ranks as one of the top influencers in our predictive models and our scores. So, easier said than done, of course, for people that have tried to quit smoking, but that one's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, and one of the important things, and we're going to publish it in our next version, the reference guide, is that we looked at people who smoked and then quit, and your risk can actually go down by a huge multiple by the longer you've quit. So if you've quit, so you sort of have a baseline risk based on how many packs of cigarettes times years. We call it smoke pack years. That's a huge predictor of disease. But then we can see that risk can go down 5-fold if you've quit, like over 30 years of quitting.
Interesting.
So I'd like to see that as sort of encouragement that if you quit, and that risk doesn't hang with you forever. It sort of goes like in increments. Like you quit for 2 years, it goes down a notch. 8 years, down a notch. 15. And
Just keeps getting better.
And people have quit 30. It never goes down to the risk of someone who never smoked.
Is that right?
But it would, but considerably less than people who are continuing to smoke.
You're not talking about the random casual smoker when he was 16 just on cadet camp. You're talking about somebody that actually smokes. Asking for a friend. But it's somebody who had smoking very much a part of their lifestyle. They can actually see the massive impact, though. That's pretty cool. Do you think, is there anything you can do is it realistic to see any change within 30 days in a lifestyle? We haven't probably done a lot of testing on that. We often test 3 to 6 months, people getting their blood biomarkers done. Is there anything, if you're a smoker, obviously that would be a big impact, reducing alcohol to, some red wine every now and then. What else is there that people can do, even within like a 30-day window? Is there anything?
I think within 30 days, the things to look at, the biomarkers that could change can be your waist. Maybe your waist can change by an inch. Then again, we're adding waist circumference to the reference guide because it's a huge predictor. So you can see that maybe small changes there. You can start to see your resting heart rate change. That's another marker. People notice, after 30 days of exercise, maybe they're especially zone 2, resting heart rate comes down 5 beats, and we see that's a big predictor, especially even of all-cause mortality. So I think the other biomarkers, I wouldn't get a blood test every month because those will change more slowly over time. But maybe even in a quarter, maybe even 3 months, you might see a change in your blood work.
It's better to get a 3 to 4 month stint of doing something.
We may have talked about this on a prior episode, but speaking of resting heart rate and alcohol, those two combined, as we've all seen, the nights that you have, a couple, let alone more than a couple drinks, your heart rate, resting heart rate is, 10,
it's
20
working hard,
beats
yeah,
higher. So
yeah.
That's something that you can directly see. If you have any wearable, you're going to see your resting heart rate really fluctuate based on alcohol consumption.
And the HRV plummets.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
even a sniff of beer and it plummets on me.
The exception was when I was in Sardinia,
Yeah.
and I had the lowest heart rate and highest HRV ever,
So we ordered cases.
and I did have a glass. I did have
So we're all
a
moving
glass
to-
of wines.
So you ordered cases of wine from Sardinia.
Yeah. Either import them or we'll just move there.
Just move there. We're
Yeah.
just going to move there.
We'll live a lot longer.
So that's one of the blue zones, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
What are a couple of the other blue zones we're going to have to travel to? We're going to have to self-explain.
Okinawa.
Okinawa, so we go to trip. I
Okay,
used to,
California. What's the
You
town
get
in
Greece,
California? Southern
Loma
Cal-
Linda,
Loma Linda.
California.
Okay. I hear a field trip coming up, guys. I think we should be doing this podcast in each of those locations over the next, 6 months.
And then you got Greece. I can't remember the name of the island in Greece.
I'm putting you on the spot, but
And,
yeah.
There's the last
oh,
one,
and
Switzerland?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, yeah.
Costa Rica, although I'm told that blue zone's sort of disappearing.
Mm-hmm. Too much fast food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More
That's
influence
even
of fast
happening in
food.
Okinawa.
Okinawa, too.
The fast food, American fast food coming into Okinawa has changed the number of centenarians and the health quality.
Wow, that's an interesting statistic to look at too.
Something we should not be exporting.
No, we're not proud of that.
No.
But it's happening.
But when I went to Sardinia, I was thinking, okay, great, Italy, I'm going to enjoy Italian food and long life. And I couldn't find a pizza.
Oh, really?
So, they closed. It's a very laid-back lifestyle, which I'm sure is part of it. They close for like 3 or 4 hours at lunch. It's just so
There's something about the stress. Yeah.
Well, and a common thread, of all the blue zones is movement, right? And for different reasons. Some of them are moving a lot for work, or it's part of their lifestyle. Others, exercise. But that seems to be one of the common threads is very active lifestyles.
Interesting. And that's something that we've all become a bit slack at.
Yeah.
You know.
And so one of the things, when we talk about exercise, whether it's, and we're going to do a study on, as you know, Greg, on the, the types of exercise, kind of low intensity versus high intensity to see. And, so one of the other things is just as Dave mentioned, walking. One of the things that we try to adhere to is, kind of this concept of 7,500 to 10,000 steps a day. We've done step competitions, and people can do this in their companies, their families. It's a fun and kind of engaging way to, promote that active lifestyle. Because there's people that I know that maybe think that they're extremely healthy. They're going and doing maybe an hour of high intense workout in the gym, and then the rest of the day they're completely
Nothing.
immobile, right?
Yeah.
So that's not great either.
I saw a report once, or maybe it was, they were talking about if you, and you guys probably seen this, like doing 10 minutes every hour is almost better than doing 1 hour alone in the morning. What do you think about that? I mean, moving consistently throughout the day rather than doing a bulk. I'm putting you on the spot, by the way. I haven't given you a chance to do any homework on this, but
Yeah, it makes logical sense, but we haven't seen necessarily the studies to support it.
This one I'll have to go with. I don't know.
yeah.
It could make some sense.
Well, there's a study for us.
Yeah.
You do your hard work in the morning. I'll just work out 10 minutes throughout the day.
Some air squats in the office.
Air squats. I got the chin-up bar already going. I did have a quick look at the blue zones that we have, just for people listening. You can reference it. So you got Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy. How am I going to say this? Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, and then Loma Linda, California. So we did crush all of that. Actually, you guys did. We did cover them all, but just so everybody knows,
Pass the quiz.
we'll have those in the show notes, so you can go look them up as well if you want to go explore. That they're kind of major places where people have seen longevity and really crushing it on that. Have we seen? Here's another question for you, David or Barry. I don't mind either of you. Have we seen any interventions that may be wrong and could actually make health scores worse? Like people go. You've talked about exercise and you mentioned like people, if they do really hard workouts, that actually could things like that could actually make it worse? Is there anything else that you're seeing? Fad diets, fasting, anything else?
But definitely, I would say the fad diet, the low-carb diet seems to make health scores worse. Again, we don't have enough people to call it a study yet. The other thing, interestingly, is there's people with already very high scores, like in the, say, the 90th percentile, and they want to get better. And they start working out more and more and more to where it's like 2 hours a day. And then the scores actually go down. And I haven't seen enough cases to call it a study, but it does give you the signal you can do too much. You can overexert, you can overtrain, and more is not always better when it comes to exercise.
That's great. You know, it's interesting on that. You say that, and people say, there's an assumption, because I was a professional triathlete for a long period of time, there's an assumption that I was healthy. And I was like, no, I was very much about performance. And in fact, I think I was incredibly unhealthy. I would have loved to have had these health scores as a professional athlete. So I actually could have seen it more of going, your health is still a priority, even though you're trying to work on the performance. And if you can, and I think that's where actually we're looking at a lot of the younger generation now of athletes are healthier than we were 20 and 30 years ago. They're actually prioritizing sleep and fueling and the right kind of training more than we did.
Right. I think you're seeing this trend of athletes being able to be athletes for much longer. Like it used to be maybe by 30 you were done, and then it was 35, and now you got some 40-year-old top athletes, and it's from that knowledge. You see more of the lower intensity zone 2, not this whole no pain, no gain. You just work as hard as you can every day until you burn out. And also, again, like you said, the knowledge of sleep and better nutrition, stuff that we didn't have access to in our prime.
Meant you were weak. See, we come from the mindset.
Products of the 80s and 90s, that was all it was about, right? No pain, no gain.
Who works the hardest?
And you eat a hamburger after and you're good.
Yeah,
right?
hamburger and a Coke to wash out all the bad. If you've been swimming in the River Seine, which we did in '96, just drink some Coke, it'll kill everything. I love, by the way, the Olympics this past year. They're like, oh, no one swum in the River Seine in 100 years. I'm like, we actually did in '96, and it was a dead river. It was, when I say dead river, it was dead fish and animals along the sideline.
It's awful.
I remember.
And we just did it.
I remember we used to drink those big super gulps, like 44 ounce. And like the heavyweight with us would have a 64 ounce of Coke, and it was like, how much can we drink? And now you look at it, like all that, so much sugar, like it was probably devastating to our bodies.
You do look back. Look, we're 3 old men now, but it's like you do look back and go, how are we still so? You know, there is a resilience to the human body. I say this to my wife Laura all the time. You know, we are really strong. Like I think innately, what people are doing to their bodies with poor fueling, poor nutrition, not moving, people are still living a long time. And we touched on it a few episodes ago. It's not so much about the living long. We want to reduce that length to death at the end, mobility at the end. And but look, I want to shift gear again. I want to. You know, I was at one of my kids' birthday parties. I was talking to a dad there and telling him a bit about what we're doing here. And he's like, Greg, just tell me one thing that I can do to improve my health. What should it be? What's the one thing? I'm like, well, I like to look at a holistic point of view. And he wasn't listening to that whole holistic thing. So I want to go around the table.
He wanted the silver bullet.
He wanted the silver bullet. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot here. What do you guys each think? If there's one thing you could tell somebody right now, a loved one, a friend, or anybody listening, that they could have the biggest impact right now for their health. And I say all that knowing that we all know that it's a holistic view. But
we allowed one nutrition, one exercise.
No, you got to pick one.
And are they already exercising?
One, I'll take
the other. Yeah. Okay. If they're not already exercising, I would say exercise. And if they are already exercising, I would say avoid oils that are integrated in anything from fried foods to packaged foods. If you can do that, then that would be the one thing.
I like it.
Yeah, I would say exercise as well. You know, nutrition and exercise kind of go hand in hand. So we all know people that maybe do one emphatically well, but not the other, right? So it kind of seems incomplete. You'll see somebody that will question why they're not having better health gains. Maybe they're exercising, like I said, emphatically, or they're eating really healthy, but I think they really go hand in hand. So I think I'm breaking your rule like David and telling you both.
No. That's a fair enough answer, and I like it. And I'll give you the answer I gave this guy, and it's something I've been thinking about. And you guys know I'm very much an above the shoulders type person. So for me, the biggest impact for my own health was actually more on the mental health side. When I retired from sport, it was a little bit rough for a while, trying to figure out who I am, what's my purpose now, kind of thing. And so for me, the biggest thing was to go outside and practice gratitude every single morning and get a good slap of perspective, right? And then I found by doing that and starting every day like that, suddenly everything else would go into place. And I'm not cheapening exercise and nutrition because I think they then kind of go together, right?
It's interesting because there's those 4 pillars of health, right? That you need them all, but for you, the trigger is the head. Like for me, if I exercise, then I'm more relaxed and low stress. So to me, the head follows from the exercise. So I think we're all thinking in terms of those 4 pillars, but maybe a different one's a trigger for me than for you.
That's a good point. I like how you put that. It's a trigger. It's what's your catalyst to get you back going. I also know don't come near me if my sleep score is under 70 or whatever. Like I'm miserable. I think I'm manic, a little bit manic depressed, and like don't come near me if I got to sleep. So sleep for me is a huge priority. Yeah. That's cool. Now I want to add something new to finish up the show this week, and this is it's going to be rapid fire, within reason. And what we're going to basically, I'm going to mention a prompt, and we're going to go around and we're going to say overrated or underrated. I don't mind if we have a little discussion around each one, so it's not going to be absolute rapid fire. So are you ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay, here we go. Zone 2 training, overrated or underrated?
I'm going to say underrated.
I'm going to say underrated as well.
Okay, I'm going to say overrated.
Yeah.
Just to be different.
Just to be different.
Well, no. I actually think it's... Okay, can I explain?
Yeah.
All right, so I think it's underrated if you have any forms of inflammation that you need to just get your body back down to neutral. I think it's overrated if you're in a pretty good place already and you want to work on strength and VO2 max and other things. So it's kind of depending on where you're at.
And I'm going to admit the research is inconclusive. So it makes me feel better. I've seen other people improve, but I've also seen people who it seems like other forms of exercise works better for them. So I'll say, but that's also one we're going to do. We're going to study. We're working on a study.
Yeah, we've got a lot of study coming up. Yeah.
And you probably know these stats better than I do, Greg. For cyclists, professional cyclists, is it 80% of their training is in zone 2?
More and more these days. The more the physiologists are involved, the better they're getting at all that. Yeah.
Probably for performance, it's indisputable, right?
Yeah, I think
but
if you
overall health, that's where it's sort of this versus that is questionable, right?
Yeah, and honestly, it's probably my opinion is just based on the fact I don't like doing it.
Well, like Dave said, I think you have to commingle it with something else.
Oh yeah. Either read or I jog with a colleague.
Yeah.
Like I can never just do zone 2. It's too boring.
It gets too boring.
All right, next one. Creatine. Overrated or underrated?
I'm going to say under, because I've read some stuff recently about it. I'm actually going to start taking it after my blood test. And I've been gun-shy about taking it because I have, in my left kidney, I had a kidney operation at about the age 9. I think I had a blockage, and so my left kidney is only about 60% functioning. Oh. So, when we look at my kidney scores, I obviously factor that, and I've been hesitant to take it in the past because of the relationship of kidney function and creatinine levels. But creatine is known to escalate creatinine levels. But I'm going to take it in small dose and see, because I've read so many benefits. One of the recent ones that I'd read that I hadn't before is reduction in inflammation. Supposedly, substantial reduction in inflammation is a possibility. So I'm going to see, markers like CRP and others, inflammatory markers, what it looks like for my next blood test after doing this supplement.
So what does microdosing look for you like? They always suggest 5 milligrams a morning. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
I was going to do 5 milligrams.
Is microdosing?
5, yeah.
Okay, that's a full.
Yeah, I'm
dose
doing
to
5
me.
as I'm doing 5 as
I
full
don't-
blown.
I don't know if
I
you
take
define
3.
it.
I
Yeah,
take 3.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't define 5 as microdosing.
Yeah.
Oh, 3.
5 is
3
probably 2.5.
3 grams versus 5 grams. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah. What about you? Underrated, overrated?
I would say a little of both. Maybe a little underrated. It's in my out of maybe 25 supplements I take. It's sort of in my top 5. Like there's maybe 5 that are very strong research that they work. But I would say maybe a little over in that people are taking such high doses. That's sort of what I find. I take 3 grams. A lot of people take 5.
Yeah, I said microgram. Yeah,
And
milligram.
I tend to not, without studies on high dosage of things, I tend to look at what is an unnatural amount. And on a typical day, if you eat a lot of meat, you might get 3 grams naturally. So that's sort of how I came across a little bit lower dose of 3. So, but I'll say slightly under, because people should know it's heavily researched. It's one of the most where we're never sure, but we're pretty sure that this is good for longevity.
Yeah. I think you both answered that really well. I've started doing 5 grams a morning for the last few months. I can't say I've noticed. I think I noticed a little bit of strength. The reason I originally actually started was Dr. Tommy Wood, who we all know, actually was saying how great it is for concussions and concussion protocols, and that football players should be taking it to help prevent concussion. And I don't want to misquote him, but it's basically along those lines. And I've had so many concussions from bike accidents and rugby that it's also even has an effect cognitively for, longevity for your brain. So that's really, I'm taking it there. And then obviously if there's a little strength component, I'm kind of excited about it. So I think it's a little bit underrated still. I think it's one that we should lean into. But again, depends on where you're at. Next prompt, morning sunlight. Go look at the sun. Get up first thing. Look at the sun.
I'm going to say underrated, even though I don't do it enough. That's one I'm guilty of.
Yeah.
That I think is a big factor in getting your circadian rhythm going, sleeping better. So I would say underrated, and I need to do it more myself.
There we go. All right.
Yeah, I think it's probably underrated as well. However, the Hubermans of the world have, been, yelling from the mountaintops about this for a while. So I think people are becoming aware of it. The alternative is, as we all know, is to do red light therapy if you can't get the morning sunlight. So I get up pretty early, like 5 a.m. So my routine is I'll sit in front of a red light panel for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'll usually multitask too, and I might stretch or meditate, do some different things like that. So it's kind of a good routine that I've gotten into doing that.
I'll go underrated. Not just morning sunlight, but all sunlight throughout the day. In fact, I try and, even when I'm here, if I've got right after lunch, get outside 5 minutes, come back inside. We're in an office all day. I'm like, even just microdosing, having little bits of sunlight throughout the day, I think we can all do better, especially if you're caught in the office environment.
I actually added in our app, as you both know, we can track things, and so I use the trackability as I don't say a reward system, but an encouragement and reminder for myself to do things. And I actually added outdoor time because I find some days I'm working 12 hours and I'm at my desk and I'm not getting outdoor time, and I realized
our next meeting we do it a walking meeting outside. Sounds good. No, I think that one's a good one. And this is a hot topic right now, and I just saw you mentioned Huberman, cold plunges. Underrated, overrated?
Absolutely under, and we're working on the studies to prove it. But the way I feel doing it, I know it works.
So when you say feel, you're talking dopamine, the effects on the brain, or you're talking about the body? What do you think?
It's hard to say what it is. I mean, I feel I come out feeling completely unstressed, less muscle soreness, more alert, sort of ready to be productive, but just overall better.
I get it.
Yeah, I'd say under as well. There's, I think, hasn't been the clinical studies or the science, hard science, to prove it yet. But as Dave mentioned, we're seeking to change that. And I think there's some folks like Rhonda Patrick, not to mentioning, these longevity, folks that are. She's got a couple of pretty good segments that you can listen to about how it affects your body at the biological level. It's really intriguing and interesting. So, worth checking out for those that haven't seen some of that, called scientific literature, but scientific discovery about it.
I think when it comes to cold plunges, people look at it too much like a challenge, and they push themselves, and you don't really need to push yourself. I mean,
It's cool the body down. Yeah.
You just need to go on long enough to feel like you're cooled off. And I think, again, there's some research showing that for women maybe versus men, like because we're physiologically different, that maybe there's a different temperature that's ideal.
I think that's for individuals across the board. I think there's a temperature that's right for you and there's a temperature that's right for your mate. And it's one of those areas you probably don't need to get competitive about. It's about just cooling the core body down.
One thing about cold plunging and any of these things we're talking about is, prior to our development, and we're not the only company on the planet that's doing these types of things, but prior to the development of our products, the trackability and understandability of what's changing, was very elusive, right? So, whether it's for adipose tissue improvement from cold plunging or cognitive function, whatever that thing is that you think, and there's some evidence that, could be an improvement, to have a system to actually learn and find out, is it benefiting me? I think the missing ingredient that we've often lacked in the past. So I think having that, again, whether you do it through a company like Voloridge Health or others, just having that platform to test these things and see how it's
impacting you.
Your health.
How it impacts you, N of one.
Yep.
So I'll add my opinion on this. I think it depends on where you're at with cold plunging. So my example was, most of the 90s, early noughties, we always had our ice plunging bath. We traveled with it everywhere, but we were doing Olympic distance, short, powerful racing. We were hour 40, explosive racing. We were doing kind of training where it was all about training your heart and lungs and your VO2 max, and you didn't want to put on any muscle, and you were trying to stay as lean as you could, and we were very inflamed, and so ice bathing post-workout was great. As we moved into some of the longer racing and Ironmans and everything else, we actually started realizing we want to do less of the ice bathing, and we want the body to build the strength, like keep the stress and rebuild. It was less about getting out more often. It was about doing big workouts and then letting it sit in the body. And so we would experiment with less ice bathing for the long course racing and more when we were doing the short, powerful stuff because we were more inflamed. Then I moved into the podcasting world, and I'd never not do an ice bath before doing a big day or a podcast or when your brain's got to be on. It was just like you said, you just feel the pressure decreases, the anxiety, the creativity increases, the dopamine's going. So I've always thought of it more like experiment on yourself. When do you actually feel like you need it or not need it? And now we'll give you the tools so you can actually measure it. So it's really cool. I'm going to skip to this one. HRV tracking. Overrated, underrated?
I'm going to say neutral. I think TBD.
Yeah. I think we're still learning a lot about HRV, and we had Dr. Dan Plews, who we met, my good mate. Big shout out. He's writing the book now on HRV. So
I'm gonna go with underrated, but also state that we don't yet know how to properly interpret it. So I'd say with a grain of salt, but tracking it, having the data, so that when we have that knowledge, it will be useful, because it does correlate to readiness, wellness. We just don't know if your HRV is low, does that mean you're unhealthy?
Yeah.
We don't know that. Versus if you're the higher the better, we don't know that either.
Yeah.
So those are the things to just be careful with interpretation.
Have you guys seen clear causation from HRV? I find that tracking my HRV, I haven't been able to identify. There are some, perhaps easier to identify things like, for example, we talked about drinking and resting heart rate. That's clearly going to suppress your HRV. But have you found, aside from alcohol consumption, have you guys found other things that you'd say, clearly this is a benefit to my HRV.
Maybe predicting getting sick. What I found the other week, my Oura Ring gave me mild symptom update. And I felt like my left gland was a little swollen, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, because I didn't feel sick. And it gave me that little bit, and my HRV was low, and not substantially low, and I don't have a high HRV. I think I'm around like 39 to 40 or somewhere there. And it just went down to 29 to 30 for a couple of days, and I took it really easy, and then that was the only time I was like, oh, that was actually
Informative.
Is HRV a predictive model for potentially an illness coming on? I don't know. Again,
Probably. I've seen the Oura's been like 3 for 3 on my last 3 illnesses, and my temperature going up.
Yeah.
And so if the temperature is high, it would make sense the HRV is low as well. So I would say it's a predictor of that. But also your readiness. Like for me, if I did a really hard hit workout, I'll notice HRV's like
Shot.
lower the next morning, and I feel.
Have you seen that with yours?
I haven't seen that as much.
Yeah.
I'll have to pay
But you're
more
doing so
attention.
many hit workouts, it maybe doesn't
Yeah,
know
maybe
it.
I'm just
If it's every
doing
day.
Maybe
it
it's
too
just-
much. It's just always getting suppressed by intensity.
All right, here's an easier one, I think. Standing desks. Underrated, overrated?
Well, I would say under, just because so few people have them. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've been a proponent of them in our company, and have as far as offices that I've been to, I've probably never seen an office with as many people that have them as in our office. But generally speaking, that's highly uncommon, right?
I agree.
I'd say underrated.
Yep.
Especially if you can get a treadmill under the desk. I'd like to see a culture shift to where, like, right now, if you're like sort of on a treadmill in a meeting, it's considered a little rude, but hopefully that'll change to where that's the norm, right?
Yeah.
Where if everybody's walking, that becomes a norm.
Yeah.
People will be so much healthier.
Just standing up more often.
Here we are sitting during
I know.
podcast,
I'm
right?
like, that's a dumb one. Why did I ask that one?
Do you get how many hours of the work, or what percentage of the workday would you guys say you sit versus stand?
I sit way more than you do. I don't think we've had a meeting where you've sat with me yet.
Yeah.
You're just towering over me as I sit down.
So I'm standing 75% of the day in the
Yeah.
office because my desk is always standing. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
the
you're
sit-
always standing too.
few sit-down meetings where I sit.
Yeah, I'm probably like 90% sitting. I'm like, yeah. I still. Well, you know what? If I've done a big workout in the morning, and even that's not that big compared to your guys, but I don't know. I sit, and then I'd prefer to go for a walk, and then come back and then work, and then I'm kind of like get up and then get back down.
It does take some adaptation. Like, for example, one of the things I started doing when I started standing, for the most part throughout the day was dictating my emails. And I found it surprisingly efficient, right? So you just have to adapt, because typing isn't necessarily, especially if you're on the treadmill. Standing itself, you can type pretty
You can do that,
effectively, but if you're on a treadmill, you get frustrated, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
dictating is a good way to go.
Yeah.
Just got to find the right speed to walk, even if you're walking.
You got that rhythm typing?
Even if you're walking really slow, or even if you're walking 0.5 miles per hour, you're still moving.
Yeah.
And
My
that-
feet
and that
don't get
makes a
sore if
difference.
I'm moving. I can't stand and not move.
Yeah.
If I just stand and I'm not moving, my feet get really sore. So if I walk, my feet are fine. Even if it's, like you said, super slow.
It's more natural motion. It's
Yeah.
more natural on your body to be walking versus standing.
A couple more. Let's do it. You up for a couple more?
Yep.
Breathe work. Underrated, overrated?
Probably underrated. I mean, I feel like I keep saying underrated, but I think it's because these things are not broadly
They're not
practiced,
mainstream yet, yeah,
right? So
yeah.
it feels like you have to say underrated as a result.
Mm.
I'm going to say underrated because I've seen the big improvements
Interesting.
as a result of breath work. So I have maybe 3 different protocols. I will say that my breath work are more like training versus, say, the typical, like just breathing to relax.
Right. So when you're working out, you're
So-
practicing on.
So I'll be doing breath holds while I'm working out, for example, and I found that stopped me from getting winded during a
Interesting.
really hard exertion.
There's some cognitive benefits too from breath work that you guys are probably aware of. But I started free diving. I was mainly scuba years ago, and started free diving probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and learned a lot of neat things. Of course, Wim Hof. We should give a shout out to Wim Hof. He's been a kind of a pioneer in this field, and there's some incredible videos, of things that whether it's illness, E. coli, or other things, that he's shown can have, breath work can have an impact on the susceptibility to illnesses and things. So, certainly a body of work out there that seems encouraging to promote it.
Yeah, there's been something I definitely agree with, underrated. There was something, when I'm getting these mild symptoms or you feel like you're getting sick, I remember reading something a while back, and sorry, I can't quote it, but basically talking about the importance of oxygen and how it can really, increase your immunity. And so every time I feel like I'm getting sick, I'll do really deep, heavy breath work to go, maybe oxygen's killing whatever's in there. And I found it, maybe it's placebo, again, don't have studies on it myself, but I actually find it pretty impressive when you actually do it. Heavy, deep breathing. All right, gratitude journaling. What do you guys think? Overrated, underrated? Because I know we're building it in, with our product. We have our own day book, the gratitude journaling that we're doing.
Maybe overrated, but it might be just because I haven't tried it or gotten into it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd change my mind if I did it and it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I've done it to some degree, but I haven't identified any markers or feeling or results that I've been able to say, oh, this is benefiting me in some way. Is there something that you've discovered that?
Journaling, no. For me, it's more just being outside and just taking a few deep breaths and be going, I'm grateful for fresh air. I've raced enough in Beijing, China to know that that's not a given. I'm grateful for, my house, my home, my family. You step through all those things. And for me, it's not so much writing it all down. I've got it all, it's all in here now, and I just step through it. And for me, I just need to do it to get a good slap of perspective, like I said earlier, because, and I found it to be enormously impactful. And there's something around them manifesting in this universe that we're living in that I'm like, there's still something in the world that we don't understand, and I'm kind of like, I want to lean into that a little bit. So part of my gratituding is also just manifesting, and I think it's been pretty good for me. And I think a lot of that comes from sport and visualizing and always going through things constantly, getting ready for races. And so for me, that practice of going outside and really, it's not actually writing it down, but it is basically there. It's catalogued in my mind every single day.
Do you ever do like external gratitude expression where it's always kind of just you by yourself?
Always by
Just
myself.
curious.
But I'm out loud. I'm out loud. If you walk past, you'll hear me.
Who's he talking to?
Yeah. But it's also 4 a.m. in the morning, and I'm just sort of outside looking at the moon or whatever. And
because sometimes the reason I ask is hearing others express gratitude, I think, is a positive impact.
Yeah. It's like a little reminder, right? Yeah. But I do, like I wouldn't mind spending a little bit more time, and we've started doing it with the Volo app, and we've talked about it. At the end of the day, I'll go through my day, and it's not so much gratitude journaling, but it's a little bit of just going through the day. Yeah. What was the day like? Social capital, work-related things, and it makes me, that monitoring of yourself is just a little bit another piece of just taking ownership of who you are, and I think that can give you some clarity. Well, guys, I think we hit quite a few. We're going to do that kind of a thing towards the end of each of the episodes. We're also going to start including questions from listeners, and we're going to do our best to answer them in future episodes. Before we go, I want to go around. What's one takeaway you'd want listeners to leave with today after this episode? What's one big takeaway?
Add your Cystatin C to your blood test.
Yeah. I was waiting for that. That was the given. That was the big one. Yeah.
Took the easy one.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. So I would say, and this is maybe a thematic, concept we talk about, often is try different things, right? Try different things and have an ability and a platform to measure, what the impact of those things are. Whether it's new supplements, changes in your dietary approach, exercise, different things like that. Try different things and be exploratory.
Yeah, love that. Take more ownership of yourself. Well, you guys have taken two really good ones. I'll go on the one that you said earlier, and I'll quote it again, and that is something is better than nothing when it comes to your exercise, when it comes to movement. if you're running out of time and you're like, I haven't got, just go for a 10-minute walk around the block. Whatever it is you can fit in on any given part of the day. Something is better than nothing. And if you can just do that daily or a couple of times throughout the day, you'll be better for it. But guys, we just knocked that one out of the park. That was awesome.
That's fast.
That's great.
That was a good chat. Look, right on the hour mark too.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Cheers.
All right.